Quest software has solutions that allow you to add an additional layer of security to your Microsoft environment. To learn how they can help you protect and detect changes in your environment, please go to quest.com/MPM. Make sure your team is prepared to fight off the latest cybersecurity threat. IT Pro TV is the resource to keep you and your IT team skills up to date. You can stream IT Pro TV's courses live and on demand worldwide, so there's no need to send staff to off-site training. Their team solution provides access to a supervisor portal for full control over your team's training schedule and group analytics. Visit itpro.tv/enterprise security and use the code ES30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. To learn more about IT Pro TV's team solution, sign up for a free demo of their supervisor portal. Pony Express. Check out their line of penetration testing devices, including the Pwn Pad, Pwn Phone, and Pwn Pro. For enterprises, there's Pwn Pulse, providing continuous visibility into wired, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth spectrums across all physical locations, including remote sites and branch offices. For all those hard-to-reach places, there's Pony Express. Visit them on the web at ponyexpress.com. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. I am so excited to be here with John today, because John and I haven't talked in a while because, life, conferences, things of that nature, new technology. We got some new technology in our lives, John. It's interesting. We talk on Enterprise Security Weekly about solving enterprise security problems, which are very much planned and thought out for the most part when they adopt new technology and secure new technology. I have the complete opposite approach. I just adopt new technology to mess around with it, and if it gets in the way, hey, I deal with it. So John and I both, we'll start here, got a new refrigerator. Did yours come in yet? Yours hasn't come in yet, right?
Yes, I did. No, I got it.
You got it.
There's nothing more terrifying. I got the Samsung hub.
Yeah.
Like the home hub.
It's got the big Android. It's a big Android tablet in the door.
Yes. And you have to be careful because you might want to slip up and call it something else hub. Like, yeah, I got that new home hub.
Right.
Rich. Yes, that's right. Home hub. And we got the Android in it. We got it hooked up. I love Pandora. I love having the calendar synced. I love having the weather. I love everything about it. And we had everyone over to my house, and I come around the corner, and I have Egypt and a whole bunch of pen testers from BHIS and Larry. They're all playing with my fridge. Oh. And I had to point out to them, I'm like, guys, have fun, but I want you to know that this fridge actually that app actually controls the temperature of the fridge.
It does.
So if you brick my Android device on my fridge door, it will destroy my refrigerator. Will not be able to eat. So, but I love it. What have you got yours yet?
So I have, and I've messed around with it. I like it. Some things don't. I don't know if you played around with the TV mirroring where you can stream your TV to your fridge.
No, I have not.
So I have a Samsung TV, and I got it working, and I was like, this is great. I can have the football game on my fridge while I make a cocktail and some food and stuff. And it's just so horribly choppy, it's unwatchable. And I don't know why. I don't know. Have you gotten the app, the Connect Hub app working?
No, I haven't yet ran the Connect Hub app. Now the Connect Hub app on the fridge is broken because you got to register it with the Samsung to link all of your accounts.
Yeah.
But then it gets to the point where you have to register on the Samsung website with your frickin' fridge, and it says, please enter the CAPTCHA below, and it doesn't display, and there's a little box that says, this particular device does not support the CAPTCHA for the Samsung app on the Samsung fridge. There's clearly some stuff they did not think through yet at all.
I read something where if I put the newer app on my phone, that it could find my fridge, and then I could just manage it, and that doesn't work. It never finds my fridge.
Never finds your fridge.
I've enabled Bluetooth on it, and the whole. I can see. If you stand in front of it and you don't open it, you can go into the app that shows you the cameras so you can see what's in your fridge when you're standing in front of it, which is kind of cool because you don't have to open it to see what's inside of it. And given it was running on generator power because I lost power at my house for a few days, that was handy.
It was helpful. We also have nothing. There's no food, children.
When it comes back on, especially from generator power, it says that the file system is corrupt. And my wife got very upset and told me that I broke the fridge. I'm like, no, I just got to correct. It corrects the file system, and then everything's fine. So
now I got a question. Does YouTube work on your fridge? Because it did work for me, and then there was a software update, and now YouTube just goes to a blank.
I didn't even see the YouTube app on there. I've been able to stream.
No, there wasn't an app.
You could just browse to YouTube?
By surfing.
I gotcha. Yep. I can stream Spotify on it, which is my son and I play this game where I want to listen to my music. And so I've got like 3 or 4 different ways that I can play music in the house. And he goes in and disables those methods. Like he'll turn the Alexa thing so I can't control it with my voice. And then he'll like turn off the Sonos speaker so I can't listen there. So then I started streaming to the fridge. And that kind of stumped him at first. And he just went on the fridge and disabled Wi-Fi. And then that was it.
Well played. Well played.
I was like, dude, extra dessert for you. That was good.
There you go. You get a candy bar. Well played.
Now, did you get the new Pixel phone? Because I got one of those too.
No, I'm still running the first Pixel. I've heard nothing but horrific things about the new Pixel phone.
I like the new Pixel phone. I'm a couple days in. I like it a lot. I think it's faster than the first one.
Maybe I'll give it a try.
You should give it a try.
Maybe Definitely. I'll give it a shot because mine's got scratches. It's just horrible. It's got a lot of road miles on it.
Yes. Well, speaking of horror stories, because Halloween was yesterday, which is fun.
Halloween.
I kind of liked this post from Tripwire that talked about people's horror stories. There's some funny stories in there. Like the pen tester had to go to the prison to do a pen test and was in basically general population installing servers, which was kind of interesting. So there's all kinds of stories like that. I'm sure we could come up with our own horror stories. Next year for Halloween, John, we should probably do a horror stories webcast because it's fun. Yeah.
An entire horror, because I can guarantee you our horror stories get Larry involved, get Carlos involved, get Joff involved.
Awesome.
Our horror stories would be better than these.
Yeah. Most
of these are just like, I was in a prison surrounded by a whole bunch of people. I'm like, did they do anything? No. Did you have to get into a knife fight with your wrist tied to another prison inmate? No. You got nothing to worry about then. Because I've heard from you've got tons of horrible stories from the university that you dealt with.
Got
for
some
a long
university.
Time.
I've got a lot of horror stories. Yeah.
Yep.
Speaking of horror stories, automation. Automation usually breeds some horror stories.
It's key.
It's the key.
Native cloud reality.
Native reality. Just a terrible.
Cloud native reality.
And Twistlock is. they're one of the major players. That we do because they're one of the major players in container security, and yeah.
This whole article is crap.
It is.
I hate this article because they're basically looking at it like the secret to doing it right is changing everything. And it's like, oh, really? God, yeah, that's going to make people want to adopt your technology when you tell them they're idiots and they've been doing it wrong and they have to change absolutely everything. I just do not like this article at all.
But
they drop way too many phrases throughout the entire thing. It's basically a hodgepodge soup.
They use DevOps like 4 times in the first couple of paragraphs, maybe more.
The first couple of paragraphs, and then they got Kubernetes and Soft Labs and Jenkins, and oh my God, it's everywhere.
It is. I think you do have to change. I think your development process is going to change whether you like it or not. It's actually a focus of some of my research right now. I liked your recommendation, John, on the not so secure virtual machine that has the insecure Docker containers in it.
Docker instance.
Yeah.
Just awesome.
That's helping. We're getting ready to spin up a new show, hopefully in the coming year, that will address some of these issues. But I don't know that it changes everything is kind of a strong phrase, but it's certainly your developers are changing how they work software as it's deployed. That whole process is changing. And I was just having this conversation with someone today. I think that security professionals are behind the curve when it comes to DevOps and security, containers and microservices and security. Our webcast tomorrow, I'm going to talk about that at length for our webcast tomorrow with Joff. So I think paying attention to companies like Twistlock is important, and hopefully they come up with better articles than this one. So.
Well, and let's go through why. Let's give some constructive feedback to Twain Taylor. The first thing is basically telling people that they got to change absolutely everything is not a good idea. I didn't even make it through the article, and I love this stuff. Like you said, there was like 9 different instances of DevOps halfway through, and then it just becomes name dropping of different technologies at a very high rate, and it makes it impossible to get any type of cohesive message out of this article to make me think this is what I need to do to fundamentally change the way I'm going about. So almost any one of these concepts that they have, they should have spun that off into separate articles. So it looks to me like they tried to crash 9 articles together into one article and make sure that there were enough buzzwords hit in the article so it would give them like search engine optimization. And so if anybody like Googles these phrases, it's going to bring this article, but this article is not going to help them. And once again, we do like Twistlock. We like what they're doing. We like their approach, but this just does them no favors at all.
Yeah. I agree. And there's a lot of good issues in there, such as
There are, absolutely.
the trade-offs between containers and VMs. I started reading a great book. It's like Mastering Docker or something like that. It does a really good job of explaining that. And you know what? It doesn't use a lot of buzzwords. It uses one graphic. You can explain the difference with like one or two graphics, and they did it, beautifully. So I wanted to give, if you want to check out a book that I thought a lot of, for me, John, what was missing was that fundamental, like, start from step zero and tell me about this Docker thing, right? And the book actually does a great job of like starting and building that foundation. When you start reading articles like this without the foundation, you can get lost really easily. So, let's see. I want to talk about Safe Breach, John, because they've got some great talks, it sounds like, that are coming up. And I know this is a company that we talked about, and I think I'm starting to think about them differently because of the product that Grim has released. And when I started talking about Grim's product, Crossbow, some people are like, well, isn't that similar to what Safe Breach does? And I'm like, well, if that's the case, I think it's interesting how there's similar problems that they're solving, similar points of view, but slightly different. But an area that I really like, kind of their take on adversary simulation. And I think Safe Breach uses different terminology than Grim does. Grim, I think, is much more focused on simulating malware. I think Safe Breach gets a little more markety and their messaging gets lost. If they're providing a similar thing, I think the use case is very, very strong, right? There's a big company that had a breach, and they're like, we got all the security technology. How do we figure out what's working and what isn't on an ongoing basis, short of maybe having an internal pen test team? And even if we do, them keeping up with all the changes and everything is still difficult. Can't we automate something to simulate attacks in our environment and constantly give us feedback? And that's the space in the category that I'm really excited about moving into the new year.
Yeah. Yeah, and I absolutely love this entire category. And you talk about Grim and Crossbow, and yes, Safe Breach is in it. Red Canary released their tool set. I know that Subt had been working on it. I can't remember what it's actually called. But it goes back to the question I was asking earlier, is basically tying what these products are doing, making sure that it's actually tightly coupled to the MITRE attack framework, and not trying to identify specific threat actors. And almost all of my beasts with threat intelligence are people trying to identify who is the specific actor that's going to come after us in the future. That's garbage, that's crap, that's stupid, and I'd be happy to argue that with anybody. However, once we start taking the techniques and we create a bucket of techniques that tend to be reused by attackers in a variety of different ways, making it very difficult to identify a specific attacker, but identifying the specific Lego bricks that the bad guys use in their techniques, that's brilliant. And that's where Grim, Crossbow, that's where Safe Breach, that's where the MITRE attack framework and the stuff that Chris Gates and Nickerson came out with and we're talking about. That's really where the industry starts to look into and basically identify the gap analysis of an organization's ability to detect malware or detect an adversary doing a breach simulation on the inside of the network. So I'm really excited about these products. I think they're fantastic. We've played with a couple of them. And it's a wide open space right now. And it's kind of interesting because everyone's trying to own it 100%. They're basically like, we're the ones that came up with this technology. It's okay if there's other vendors in this place. It's going to lead to competition, and that's going to be good for us all the way down the line. So this is finally getting to the point where cyber threat intelligence, I think, is going to provide value.
Yeah, because it's based on what's in your environment, which is important.
Yeah, and they're also going on a world tour, which I think is cool. If you look at it, they're at Hackfest this Friday, and then they're in Dallas, Fort Worth, at Southern Methodist University. They're just kind of making a tour of it. I really, really like the way that they set this entire thing up. It's just cool.
I agree. So let's see. Coverity Scan Report finds significant adoption of secure practices in open source software projects. I think that's kind of interesting. And I think events this year in the past year have really highlighted the need for putting open source software under the microscope of security. And certainly we've seen numerous incidents in the past year, especially, and it's finally starting to catch on. And I think that enterprise adoption of open source software has certainly been on the rise in my very unscientific view of the world. And John, one thing we point to, right, is as we talk to enterprises, a lot more are using Bro. They're like, this is great.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of adoption like that. And another area of research that will ultimately lead to a talk that I think I'm scheduled to give. And there have been similar talks, and thank you to those who provided resources, is using open source software in the enterprise. So this story caught my attention really for that light. So,
and like I said, I think it's a good news story of the day, right? I mean, whenever you talk about the number of defects that were discovered back in 2006, I think, it was over 500,000. And it's good to see some improvement being made. And more importantly, Coverty has their scan software that is free. I think they still have free software that you can use, or a free service that you can use. And you also have services like SWAMP, Software Assurance Marketplace with universities. And I think that there's now enough tools out there. It isn't just rats and flaw finder. There's enough tools out there that are free that if you're an open source developer, you have the ability to actually go through and test your code. Really, it's getting to the point there is no excuse. You just can't say, well, I didn't have access to really expensive software to test this.
Yep. All righty. So Ixia enables enterprises to leverage existing open network switches to deliver network packet layer broker functionality. Remind me again, what is network packet broker layer functionality? It's
basically allowing you.
Go ahead, John.
I think it's a lot of dynamic routing of packets. So whenever you're having packets going through, instead of it's being straight like layer 2 transmission from one port to another, you can actually put some level of intelligence. You can put in load balancing. You can, it's kind of like the equivalent of working with private VLANs and VLANs. You can actually make the switches intelligent as far as where the network traffic is actually going. It's kind of a mashup between a next generation firewall that is more protocol aware and a switch being basically dumped onto one common product.
But the goal of Ixia is to give you a copy of those packets, right, to feed your security tools, from what I understand. And it sounds like they're able to do that a lot more dynamically and a lot more efficiently, other than just using a span port or putting a huge investment in something like Gigamon.
Absolutely. And I think that that's probably where this is going to be used a lot more whenever you're talking about the load balancing, whenever you're talking about creating span ports, which, to be honest, is a question that you and I have been talking about a lot with AI Hunt and Rita. How are we going to get organizations to put in another device or another product or another application or a Docker instance on an already crowded span port infrastructure? And with Ixia and some of the things that they've been working on is actually providing that level of visibility down to the security products. And this is just an example. This will tie into the SSL certs we're going to talk about a little bit later. Ixia knows their core competency, and they're doing an outstanding job of absolutely crushing it within their specific core competency.
So let's talk about SSL certs. Francisco Partners acquires Komodo Certificate Authority, and DigiCert closed the acquisition of Symantec's website SSL security unit.
Yeah. And this goes to what I was just talking about. I think a lot of these companies like Komodo and Symantec, they grew really, really, really fast, and they bought a whole bunch of different companies. They added in a whole bunch of different services to kind of create this end-to-end security kind of offering for their entire company. And I think that we're seeing is Symantec and Komodo saying, this SSL thing may not be our core competency. We may be able to spin this off, get some funding, and actually funnel that back into what we're actually known for, so that we can do that well, rather than try to focus on what we do and do it well, rather than trying to do absolutely everything mediocre or some situations poorly.
Yeah, I think it's a brave move by Symantec, who's made some acquisitions lately, and it sounds like they're a big behemoth that's trying to refocus, which takes time, but making some of those strategic decisions to say, this SSL stuff, probably best we spin that off.
Yep. And I can't remember how much did they actually sell it for. I know it was in the article.
Was it disclosed?
$950 million.
Nice.
So that's not an consequential chunk of change at all.
Likely they'll use that to fund research internally and or buy other companies that align more with their mission as a company.
Yep.
In acquisition news too, it's interesting. Extreme Networks buys Brocade. Which I think we're going to see. Well, I think we're going to see this consolidation, right? I think that, my experience with Brocade was when we talked about connecting storage arrays to the data center. Everyone's like, well, we need Brocade, fabric fiber switches in order to do that. They're the leader in that space. And I think, over time, we've seen kind of a downsizing of the data center And so they're not able to be a big player anymore, because now when people need storage, they can go buy that in the cloud. And a lot of instances that makes sense. Now, in some, as you and I have talked about, John, it doesn't. Sometimes it's more expensive to store and process stuff in the cloud than it is locally. But I think we're seeing that switch, pun intended, right? For a lot of organizations, their data centers are downsizing, so we're seeing consolidation in some of these fabric switches in other networking companies like Extreme. Well, Extreme being a bigger player.
Yep, and that consolidation has to happen. Like whenever you're talking about highly specialized equipment for storage and data transfer on-prem, and it's now moving into the cloud, if you're these vendors, right, and you have this really expensive gear, and almost all of your customers, the diversity of customers is now moving to the cloud.
Right.
The total customer base you have may be buying more of this gear, but there's fewer of them. So now you're directly trying to sell to Amazon, you're trying to sell to DigitalOcean, you're trying to sell to whoever, Google. Any type of cloud provider.
Yep.
So you don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time trying to compete with each other in that particular place if you're only competing with fewer and fewer customers. So that type of merger acquisition is actually a good move in the long run. I don't know if it's good for the people that are buying these products.
That's true.
It's going to drive the price up.
Yep.
But it is an absolutely smart move.
That's pretty much. I have not heard of this company, Lacework, before. Have you heard of this company, Lacework?
No, me neither. I thought that was weird.
And it doesn't say like who they are in the article. It just says they've added file integrity monitoring, and I couldn't really figure out. Their tagline is automation, speed, and scale, and they have a solution called Polygraph.
It
looks like a cloud.
It's the industry's first zero touch something. Wow.
DevOps insights. Zero touch is definitely the first solution to bring automation, speed, and scale to cloud security. That's all we know.
Yeah, I like this one guy that says that Lacework Polygraph thwarted pen, all in caps, pen testers at Snowflake Computing.
Interesting.
It's just really, if there's anybody at Lacework, they need to redo their website, honestly, because I shouldn't have to go through the website.
We shouldn't have to struggle. Yeah.
I shouldn't have to struggle. I may be an idiot, and you can call us up and say that Paul and I are idiots. But honestly,
I think we've talked about Lacework before. Now that I read their problem statement, security hasn't kept up with the velocity of cloud. Breaches are too frequent. Security teams struggle to keep up with DevOps. Yesterday's security with perimeters, rules, and log-based isn't flexible or agile. We've covered these before, I think.
Yeah.
Their problem,
I think we talked about them in relation to Cloud Passage, actually.
Their problem statement is good, right? I agree with their problem statement.
Problem statement's fine.
Yeah, it's just describing what they do and their point of view of that problem is somewhat weak. So maybe we can get someone from there.
They desperately need to get someone who knows the English language to write some things, because I'm reading, Polygraph's deep temporal baseline provides powerful graphical representation of 7 key entities for clouds classes. Application launches, that makes sense. That's awesome. Application communications, hell yeah, I'm on board. Machine servers. What the hell is that? Machine communications, once again, just bizarre all the way through.
Alrighty. I think that there's a lot of funding happening, which we'll cover more on Startup Security Weekly this week.
That would be good, because that's the one article I was kind of hoping we could get to, but it's cool if we don't. Basically funding in 2017. I like that. That's kind of a nice article too.
Yeah,
like you said, that's more startup.
I think security professionals, we should keep up with, and that's certainly one of the points that I bring up when I talk about a particular vendor and make a recommendation or give an assessment. Is I look at their funding. How much funding have they taken? How many people do they have? What are they bringing to market? All those factors come into play. And sometimes I'm really impressed as companies that have taken very little funding. And there was a company I met with last week. In the grand scheme of things, they have not taken a lot of funding at all. In fact, they took a small-ish equity round. Actually, it's probably a pretty big equity round in the grand scheme of things. It was like $1.9 million. But what they accomplished with that, I was like, that's really cool. That's really cool. So you got to take those things into consideration and give startups, a chance in your organization. And funding is one of those things that is one factor you should consider when you're looking at startups.
Well, and did you see that episode of Silicon Valley? I think it was in season 1, where there was a guy that was like on the front page of all the newspapers and magazines, and he got like $150 million in Series A. And then the company didn't do quite as well as people thought it was going to do. Not bad, just not quite as well. And he's immediately kicked out. He was ejected as
gone.
CEO. He was out, and he's at a bar and he's drinking, and he's sitting there and he's talking with one of the people at the bar, and they're like, "So do you know that you with $150 million of funding, it set the expectations so crazy high that it made it impossible for you to meet those expectations? Wouldn't you have been more successful to take less money?"
Right.
And like the poor guy is like, "Wait, I could have taken less money?" And they're like, "Yes." And then he just starts crying. So you can't really gauge the success of a company. Hey, man, I'll sign that. You can't gauge the success of a company on how much money they actually get funded, because that doesn't.
What are you getting?
There you go.
Anything
Thanks.
good?
Sand notebook cases is coming through.
Okay, excellent.
So,
excellent.
So you, it's sometimes, like you said, if you can do more with less money, and I think it opens up greater opportunities further on down the line, because it shows that you can be a little bit lean. And if you don't meet those expectations, they're like, well, he only took $10 million. And it kind of level sets things more accurately.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, John, for appearing with me on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.